Welcome to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. We hear stories about arranged marriages, but somehow they just don't resonate because perhaps it happens in other countries. But today we're going to hear about Samra Zafar's arranged marriage at 17 to a much older man and a complete stranger. And her new husband uprooted her from her home in Pakistan and moved her to Canada. There were so many promises that she was told, and they were all broken. So after a decade, she had the courage to escape with her two daughters and enrolled in university to get the education that she craved. Samra Zafar is an award-winning international speaker, human rights activist, social entrepreneur, and author of A Good Wife, Escaping the Life I Never Chose. Welcome to Empowered, Samra. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me. Really an honor.
I'm honored. And I have to tell you, I have been reading this book and I can't put it down. And it makes me angry and it makes me upset because I know that there are so many women in Canada and around the world that have experienced the same thing that you did. And so I'm so happy that you're here to share your story in hopes that so many women will be saved and have some hope to get out of the situation that they're in. But before we begin, I want to talk about you before you were married. What was your life like? What were your dreams and aspirations?
I had one dream, which was to get an education. And that was something that I had so ingrained in me. And I don't know if it was ingrained by parents or family, or was it just sort of like something that I was born with, but I could not ever get that out of my head. I wanted to go to school. I wanted to get the best education and have a career, change the world. So growing up, hearing a lot of messages around my gender, being female, so I shouldn't be dreaming about school, or I should be dreaming about getting married, and those kinds of mixed messages that I would hear all the time was a very confusing kind of a childhood. So on one hand, I was sort of this very driven teenager who wanted to achieve amazing things. And on the other hand, I was also not wanting to make people angry and wanting to fit in with my peers and wanting my cousins and my uncles and aunts and my parents to like me. So, we all as human beings, and now I'm studying to be a psychiatrist, and we all as human beings are driven for attachment, and we're also driven for authenticity. And when those two things are at odds, it creates a lot of confusion. And that's really what my childhood was like.
And I think the confusion happened because you were 16 and you liked sports and you liked to play sports and you liked to play with your friends and you had dreams of going to school, and all of a sudden you were in an arranged marriage. So let's talk about arranged marriages. Many in the world will not experience this. So please walk us through what happened to you.
So, when you talk about arranged marriage, think of it like mom playing Tinder. If it comes from your choice, your conscious choice as an adult. Like, for instance, if me today at the age of 40 went to my mother and said, you know what, I'm sick of online dating. I really want to find a partner to settle down with. Can you please help me with that? Right. And there's nothing wrong with that because it's coming from a place of independent choice.
Yes.
So arranged marriages work, and they work for a lot of people. And they work for a lot of people in Canada, in North America, and I've seen it work. So it's completely, there's nothing wrong with arranged marriages per se. But when it comes to forced marriage, when it comes to child marriage, which is always forced marriage, even if a child says, yes, I agree with what my parents have picked for me, a child should never be put in that situation. So a child marriage is always forced marriage. When there's a minor involved, when a young woman, a young girl is being pressured, and pressure and force doesn't look like a knife to your head or a gun, or a gun to your head or a knife to your throat, or like you're being tied up somewhere. And like when we think of force, we think of that physical force. It's actually coercion, it's pressure, it's this idea that you are conditioned with, that if you don't agree to this, there's something wrong with you. So that is the distinction. Arranged marriages can be completely fine, but forced marriage, child marriage is absolutely unequivocally wrong.
So when we come back from the commercial break, we will talk more to Samra and her book, A Good Wife. So please don't go away, because this story, I can't put this book down, and I think it's a must read for everyone. So come back later. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. On today's episode, we're discussing empowering yourself to make the hard choices in life. So I want to ask you right now, when you came to Canada, you were in an abusive marriage and you were so young. You were 17 years old. What was the first hint that your marriage was not going to turn out well for you?
I think I knew it right from the start. I knew it right away because the inability to go to school, being in a strange country, especially when I was told by his parents that I shouldn't be dreaming about school anymore, even though that's what was promised to me. I knew it right away that this is not going to work unless I completely give up on my independence, my authenticity, my dreams and goals. And I did try for a while to fit into that box that was designed for me, the box of a good wife, hence the name of my book. And no matter how much I tried, there was a voice inside me that kept saying, no, this doesn't feel right. And if I don't respect my dreams, then who will? So even when there was no hope of ever being able to go to school, I would stand in front of a mirror and I would practice my graduation speech to keep that hope going. And when, as I progressed through the marriage and the abuse became worse and worse, and I learned about my rights as a woman, as a human being, as a Canadian, I started to realize that I need to leave. It still took me a while. And I think that final motivation for me was realizing that I don't want my daughters to grow up thinking this is normal, and I need to break the cycle for them. That's what gave me that final push.
So deciding to pursue your own ambitions for independence is huge. And most women don't have the courage to do so. What gave you the courage and what empowered you to take the steps towards freedom? Because there's a point in your book where your mother-in-law says, if you were to leave, the government would give your daughter to your husband since you have no education and no money.
Yeah. So I'll answer this in a bit of in a reverse order. First of all, yes, I was told those messages. Not only would I lose my kids, I would be deported because my ex-husband sponsored me to Canada. I would be out on the streets. I would not be able to work because I did not even have a high school diploma when I got married and I came here. So there were a lot of these barriers and fears. Which meant there was a lot of darkness in my world at that time. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is, I am afraid. I am terrified. I know that. I accept that. And I'm still going to move forward and do something that I believe in my heart that is right. That's what courage is. And when we think about when you say, oh, some people don't have the courage, I actually disagree with that. I think we all do have the ability to build courage. It is not an ingredient or some secret thing that some of us have and don't have. Some of us are born with and not born with. Courage is built through those incremental moments of choices. When you are faced with a choice of accepting the darkness as status quo or leaning in towards a ray of hope, a ray of light, that is a tiny step forward. It could be something inconsequential. For me, that first step, I think, to independence happened, a year into my marriage when I ordered my very first online course for my high school diploma. It was a grade 11 or grade 12, I think, English for you or something like that, through the Independent Learning Center. And all day I would take care of him and his parents and my baby, and I would go into my room at night and I would study. And that one little step in that moment was the first building block of that courage. And then more steps later and later. And as I call it, like going to the gym for your emotional muscle. Yeah. So you start with a tiny step, and then next time there's a little bit of a bigger step that becomes a bit easier. Just like as you build your muscle, you can lift more weights. So over time, that's what builds courage. And we all have the ability to do that. And it's not built in these grand moments of leaving an arranged marriage or going to university or any of that. It's built in those little choices that we make when we are afraid and we still choose to go forward with one tiny step.
You know, it's amazing that you talk about courage, because you're right. We all have it. It's trying to take the next steps. And fear will give you courage. It depends on how fearful you are. When we come back from the commercial break, I want to talk to you about, we talked about courage, but I want to talk to you about what empowerment means to you, because it's very different for everyone else. And clearly the show is called Empowered. It's all about empowering women. And I want to know exactly how you feel about it. So please don't go away. We will be right back with more. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's episode, we're discussing empowering yourself to make the hard choices in life. So let's get to it. What does empowerment mean to you?
To me, empowerment is the power to be yourself. It's all about the freedom to be authentic, to make authentic choices, to rely and trust our own intuition to make life choices. It's independent of whatever the world, the culture, the religion, the systems around you are telling you. And when we have the ability to not just trust that voice, but to act on it, that is our true empowerment. And the second step of empowerment to be is to empower others. To me, that's a big, big, big part of my life and always will be. It's so deeply ingrained in my core that I'm always looking for ways to pay it forward. That's why I wrote my book. That's why I'm becoming a doctor now. That's why I am doing everything that I do comes from that place that I know what it's like to be in that position. I know what it's like to receive that support and help from sometimes complete strangers who shone a light into my otherwise dark world. And I want to help others see the light they have within themselves. So empowerment to me is that being completely authentic to who you are, and then also helping others do the same thing.
I think it's important to help others. You never know. I mean, kindness and paying it forward is really important, because you never know what somebody else is going through. And we learned the hard way that a lot of women during COVID lockdown were locked down with their abusers, which, people didn't understand, because women would go to work and do their job and not say anything and, go home to their abusers. So what was driving you through your difficult times when you were going through that?
To me, at that time, I didn't have any kind of master plan that I'm going to leave. But the one thing, again, I keep coming back to it, was education. The drive to get an education was something that never left me. I was ready to give up on everything else, but not my school. So that kept me going. And once I got to get my education, once I was in university, and now suddenly I was being treated with so much kindness and respect for the very things that I was ridiculed all my life for, my ambition, my intelligence, my individuality, which is what ultimately gave me the power and the knowledge to be able to leave. So, and when you talk about, how in the pandemic we've seen abuse go multifold, and some of the statistics from across Canada are up to 400% rise in the number of calls that helplines are getting. And the reason is that isolation is an abuser's best friend. And now, during the pandemic, isolation was the norm, right? So isolation means ease to control their victims. So it was not surprising at all, as heartbreaking as it was not surprising that a lot of domestic violence statistics went through the roof during the pandemic. So in that sort of situation, you're cut off from a lot of your support systems. If let's say, the slogan was stay home, stay safe. Well, what if home is not safe?
Yeah.
What if workplace is the only safe place and you're not allowed to go there anymore? What, you're not allowed to connect with your colleagues if that's the only place you feel empowered, and now you're suddenly 24/7 hearing how you're worthless and useless and not good enough, and it becomes part of our psyche. So a lot of my work today, not even on a personal level, is about unlearning those beliefs and those stereotypes and those dialogue that I was told for so long, which became part of my mental blueprint. So, my next book, which is coming out in a year and a half, is all about unlearning all of that, unconditioning ourselves, and being our true, empowered, authentic selves.
So we have about a minute before we go to break. What did you tell yourself when you were in isolation and when you were locked up and you felt like giving up? Because I'm sure there are a lot of women out there that are in the same situation that you are in now.
Yeah, at that time, I just told myself again and again, if I give up on my dreams, then who'll fight for them if I don't fight for them, right? And I think it was also those little moments of kindness, and we touched upon it a little while ago. And I'll quickly share a tiny story from my book, actually, where I was at a Tim Hortons trying to buy a donut for my daughter, and I put my hand into my purse, and I could not find the toonie that I was sure was there. And I turned my purse inside out. It wasn't there. And I was just mortified, embarrassed. And a kind person behind me offered to buy that donut for my daughter and insisted on it. And then when I went out of the Tim's and I sat at the bench and I was just crying profusely, I felt so powerless, so pathetic. And I felt so hopeless. Yet there was this little tiny ray of light.
Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. On today's episode, we're discussing empowering yourself to make the hard choices in life. And I'm joined by Samra Zafar, an award-winning international speaker, human rights activist, social entrepreneur, and author of A Good Wife, Escaping the Life I Never Chose. Now, Samra, before we went to break, my apologies, I had to cut you off. You were talking about the kindness that somebody had paid it forward for you.
Yeah, I was sharing the story about how this man insisted on paying for my coffee, and I got, or my daughter's donut, and I got out of the Tim's, and I was simply feeling so powerless and pathetic and hopeless. But there was also that little hope that there is goodness out in the world. If a completely strange person, so who doesn't know me, can be kind to me, then perhaps there are others like that. And that little ray of hope actually prompted me that same day to order that first course that I did for my high school diploma through the Independent Learning Center. So that's why I say, we think we can't really do much, but just a little bit of kindness, a little bit of empathy and humanity can go such a long way in changing someone's life. And it's those little actions that we can all take to empower not just someone else, but also ourselves. That man probably doesn't remember me at all. Yet I go around the world in all my speeches telling the story. So that's how much impact it had on me.
It's amazing how a little act of kindness will resonate for the rest of your life. And honestly, the toonie probably didn't even make a difference in this person's life. But to you, it was this life-changing moment that allowed you to think that, there are really good people out there as well. I want to talk about the one thing that people misunderstood, misinterpreted, or would assume about your story. What would that be?
I think sometimes people tend to get into this mindset, and this is something I talk about, is especially with women who reach out to me, that you could do it, but I can't, or you're some, if there's like some ingredient that I have or some trait that I have.
You're a superhero.
Yeah. Well, it's not like that. And I'm just as human. I have those same fears. I have those same struggles every day. I struggle with mom guilt. I have burnout. I fear of failure. Like I'm currently in like just finishing a medical school, and it's been the most humbling experience of my life, where the imposter syndrome was through the roof. So there's all those things are very real. So, like I say oftentimes, fearless is not a thing. If you're fearless, you're not human. I don't like that word, fearless. All of us are afraid. It's about the choices that you make. And those choices often come to us in times when we're down. That's when you have to make those choices, because when things are good, it's great. Status quo is awesome. But when things are bad, what are you going to do? So, something that I often say about my own self is that I have struggles. I have all those things. And oftentimes, I would hear people sometimes say that, You're here because of what happened to you. And I want to challenge that with every fiber of my being, because our outcomes are what happened to us, yes, but more importantly, how we respond to what happens to us. It's that response where our power lies. So I would like to change that to, I'm not here because of what happened to me. I'm here in spite of it. And you have the power. Everybody out there has the power to write their own story. So don't let other people take that narrative.
So we have 10 seconds left. I love the fact that you talked about the imposter syndrome because we all suffer from it. I don't care who you are, we all do. But 10 seconds, what would you say to somebody that is locked up in the same situation that you were?
I would say find that source of inspiration within you. Listen to that voice in your heart, in your head, instead of all the voices that are around you that are telling you you can't do something. Because when someone tells you you can't do something, they're showing you their limits, not yours.
Thank you so much, Samra. This has been amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Samra says, and I quote, "The limiting voices in our minds are often coming from somewhere. In my case, a lot of the limiting beliefs that I had for myself had come from fear. I come from being raised in a family and a community where my dreams were oftentimes invalidated. I was often told because I'm a girl, because of my gender, I don't have the right to dream big. After everything she's been through, Samra's goal and passion is to help empower other women through the mentorship and advocacy. Ladies, you're allowed to dream big and follow your dreams. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and I'm here to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Bye for now."